The worst part about being mocked for my scars wasn't the laughter. It was knowing the laughter came from people I loved. My name is Hannah Carter, and for nearly 9 years, I lived as if I had something to hide. Every scar on my body carried a memory. A painful one. A life-changing one. Yet whenever people looked at them, they never saw the story behind them. They only saw damaged skin. And unfortunately, no one made me feel more ashamed than my own sister. My older sister, Victoria, had always been the favorite. She was beautiful, confident, and naturally gifted at attracting attention. Growing up, she could walk into any room and instantly become the center of it. I was different. Quiet. Reserved. The kind of person who preferred helping others instead of being noticed. After my accident, that difference became even larger. 9 years earlier, I had been working as a civilian communications specialist attached to a naval task force during a humanitarian mission. One terrible night, everything changed. A fire broke out aboard one of the support vessels during a violent storm. Panic spread quickly. Systems failed. Communication lines collapsed. And dozens of sailors became trapped. That night left scars on my arms, shoulders, and neck. Scars that never disappeared. The doctors saved my life. But emotionally, I never fully recovered. Especially because every family gathering reminded me of what I had lost. Victoria would make comments that sounded harmless to everyone else. You should cover those. People are staring. You were prettier before. The words seemed small. But hearing them year after year slowly destroyed my confidence. Eventually, I stopped wearing sleeveless clothes. Stopped going to parties. Stopped taking photographs. It felt easier to disappear. Then came Victoria's luxury beach engagement party. The event was enormous. White tents stretched across the shoreline. Elegant decorations covered the sand. Hundreds of guests attended. Business leaders. Family friends. Local celebrities. Everyone seemed happy. Everyone except me. I almost stayed home. But my mother insisted. For once, she said, don't let your insecurities win. So I went. And for the first time in years, I wore a dress that revealed my scars. At first, nobody seemed to notice. Then Victoria saw them. The smile on her face changed immediately. Oh wow, she laughed loudly. Several guests turned toward us. Victoria pointed toward my shoulder. Hannah finally decided to stop hiding. People chuckled awkwardly. Then she added something that shattered me. I guess she wants everyone to see what happens when life breaks you. Laughter echoed around us. My chest tightened. My eyes filled with tears. I wanted to leave. I wanted to disappear. But what I didn't know that day was that someone important had overheard every word. Someone whose arrival would expose a truth nobody expected. And within minutes, my sister's perfect world would begin falling apart. I stood frozen while conversations continued around me. The ocean waves crashed softly behind the party, but all I could hear was the sound of people laughing. Victoria smiled proudly. She always loved attention, even when it came at someone else's expense. I lowered my eyes and reached for my purse. Leaving seemed easier than staying. It always had. But before I could take a single step, a calm voice interrupted from behind the crowd. I don't believe those scars represent weakness. The entire party fell silent. Guests turned toward the source of the voice. An older man in a dark navy suit stepped forward. Silver hair. Straight posture. Commanding presence. The moment I saw him, my heart nearly stopped. Admiral Richard Hayes. The very man who had commanded the task force during the disaster years ago. Victoria looked confused. I'm sorry, she said politely. Do we know you? The Admiral ignored her. Instead, he walked directly toward me. Then, in front of everyone, he offered his hand. Hannah Carter, he said warmly. It is an honor to see you again. Whispers spread through the crowd. Victoria looked completely stunned. You know my sister? The Admiral slowly turned toward her. Then he said words I will never forget. Know her? He paused. Your sister saved dozens of lives. The beach became completely silent. Even the music seemed to disappear. I could feel hundreds of eyes staring at me. The Admiral continued. 9 years ago, during a major naval emergency, communication systems failed throughout our support fleet. Memories flooded back instantly. Smoke. Chaos. Fear. The storm. The trapped sailors. The Admiral pointed gently toward my scars. While fire spread through critical sections of the vessel, Hannah restored emergency communications under impossible conditions. My breathing became shaky. I hadn't spoken about that night in years. The Admiral continued. Those restored communications allowed rescue teams to coordinate evacuations and save dozens of crew members. Several guests gasped. Victoria's smile disappeared. Completely. The Admiral looked around the crowd. Without Hannah's actions, many families would have lost loved ones that night. Silence. Pure silence. The same people laughing moments earlier now looked ashamed, embarrassed, uncomfortable. For years, I viewed my scars as reminders of suffering. But listening to the Admiral, I suddenly saw them differently. Not symbols of loss. Symbols of courage. Victoria tried to laugh nervously. She never told anyone that. The Admiral nodded. That's because real courage rarely asks for attention. That sentence changed everything. People began looking at Victoria differently. The admiration vanished. The smiles disappeared. For the first time in her life, she wasn't controlling the room. Truth was. And truth is a powerful thing. Victoria stood speechless. The confidence she carried all evening seemed to disappear instantly. Her fiancé looked confused, then disappointed. You told me Hannah struggled after her accident, he said quietly. Victoria nodded. She did. But you never told me she saved lives. She couldn't answer. Because there was no answer. Only years of jealousy hidden behind jokes. Years of cruelty disguised as humor. Years of trying to make me feel smaller. The Admiral stayed beside me while guests approached one after another. Some apologized. Some thanked me. Others simply shook my hand. For the first time in nearly a decade, people weren't staring at my scars. They were seeing me. The real me. Later that evening, Victoria found me standing alone near the water. For once, she wasn't smiling. I didn't know he would be here, she whispered. I looked toward the ocean. Neither did I. I'm sorry, she said quietly. The words felt strange. For years, I dreamed of hearing them. Yet now that they arrived, they didn't change much. Because apologies cannot erase years of pain. They can only acknowledge it. You spent years making me feel broken, I said softly. Tears appeared in her eyes. I know. I nodded. But I was never broken. For the first time, I truly believed those words. And that was the real victory. Not embarrassing Victoria. Not exposing her. Not watching people judge her. The real victory was finally seeing myself through a different lens. Months later, Admiral Hayes invited me to attend a military recognition ceremony. At first, I refused. Public attention still frightened me. But eventually, I accepted. The night of the ceremony, I wore a sleeveless navy dress. No jacket. No cover-up. No hiding. As I walked across the stage, applause filled the room. But the applause wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was how I felt. Free. For years, I allowed someone else's opinion to define my worth. I allowed cruel words to become my truth. But they were never true. Because scars don't tell the story of what destroyed us. They tell the story of what failed to destroy us. Sometimes the people closest to us become the source of our deepest wounds. But their judgment does not define our value. Their cruelty does not define our future. And their betrayal does not erase our strength. In the end, justice didn't arrive through revenge. It arrived through truth. And once the truth was finally seen, I no longer needed anyone's approval. Not even my sister's. Because I finally learned something life-changing. My scars were never something to hide. They were proof that I survived.